Welcome to Powerful Women Off the Record, where real women talk about what it takes to remain authentic while leading in a complex world. I'm your host, Elizabeth Veely. Today, I'm joined by Maartje Van Krieken, founder and CEO of the Chaos Games Consulting and host of the Business Emergency Room podcast. She is one of those people you hire that run into the building when your company is on fire while everyone else is running out. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started.
Love it. Maartje, I am so glad we got to spend some time together today. And I know we talk a lot about business, which I love those conversations also. But I wanted to talk about something different today, where I am gathering all the women I know that have this, I feel, inherent power. It's a power, it's an authenticity, it's a realness that they have been able to maintain. And you've done it through leadership, started your own company, started your own podcast, you're a mom, and the world is swirling around you. You moved, you've done so many things, but somehow and I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying there aren't nights that maybe you lay in bed looking at the ceiling like WTF, but somehow you have stayed you. And I want to learn from that. I want to learn, what do you do, in order to maintain that power? So I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and then you elaborate on whatever one you want to. But I want to start with, tell me about a time in your life when you knew you had to make a change. Something was going on, something felt out of alignment. Maybe you felt like you were sacrificing either, something about yourself. You had to make a change. Talk to me about, how did that show up for you? Like, was it something in your body? Like, how does that show up for you? And then where did you find the strength to make that change?
Yeah, well, I definitely had quite a few of those moments. Um, I'd say, first of all, it's very flattering, of course, to be asked to come and talk about any of this after an introduction like that. I think none of us put that label on ourselves, and also find it hard when somebody put all those labels and words on us. But I'm going to try and actually receive it and say thank you for that, Elizabeth.
Excellent.
So yeah, I think I had a big one, and I'm trying to make a long story short-ish. Um, I started my career in oil and gas. I always knew since age 12 that I wanted an international career and work everywhere. And I'm an engineer by training. And the logical and easiest ways for me to do which was not a simple trajectory, but was a trajectory to make it as international staff for an oil major. And if you're in a multinational, they have career ladders and career paths. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew what kind of career I wanted, which is work everywhere. And so I tried to fit in the career ladders that they set out for you. But from the beginning, I wasn't a logical fit in any of them. So I learned much later, and I know now that my strength is in working between the spaces, not in those ladders, but I didn't know that then. So I was trying to be compliant. I'm by nature somebody who's a rule follower, and which sounds odd to many. In parallel, I have a complex relationship with my own mother, and it made me for a long time wonder whether I wanted to be a mom or could be a mom. And so I postponed that decision, and was edging on the never. And I found myself on one of the most complex and difficult and most challenged oil and gas projects on an island north of Japan in Russia, living and working and breathing with the same few people, right? It was a small town. You're working with everybody. Everybody's working 80-hour weeks. Things are rough and tough. And it was a weird collaboration with the Russians, 9 hours away from any of my friends' time zone. It was not an easy place. Also being one of the few working women, much younger. And I had finally decided that maybe never was not the case, and that I did want to maybe become a mom. And so I got pregnant within weeks, which was ridiculous because I shouldn't have been. And at the same time, my career was probably in the worst place it's ever been. I was dealing with lots of ethics issues. I was not in the right type of role. I had impossible it was an impossible situation. And then I didn't tell anybody about the pregnancy because I shouldn't be pregnant working there, and that was a challenge, and blah blah. And then I lost the baby quite late in the pregnancy.
Oh
Going on a
no.
business trip to Houston to have the scans done and stuff, and it was supposed to be the happy moment. And then turned out that the baby had somewhere passed away. I was well, somewhere between over the 4 month mark. So that was really
Oh
hard.
no. I'm
And
so sorry.
yeah, and I took that personal, right? I took it also kind of as a sign saying maybe I shouldn't want to be a mom, but I was already in a horrible space from a work perspective. And so I went into a extremely deep hole. It was really ugly and not pretty. Um, and it started in May, and by November 2nd, I was in a new role in a different continent, in a different type of discipline that was more a bridge building discipline. And I was, again, unexpectedly pregnant already again. So it changed very quickly. But after that, my career took off in a whole different direction. And yeah, I made some big changes to my life. But yeah, that to me that was a very yeah, big black hole. Very powerless it felt.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I know a lot of us women face that journey, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it because it's painful and it's hard and it can really rattle you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, do you think, because it's funny, so you're mentioning a child coming, right? It makes a change. I totally agree with you. I was a totally different person before I got pregnant with my first kids, and thank God, because I don't know, I don't know what type of person I would have been had they not show up. But so, talk to me a little bit about, did your child end up becoming like a true north? Did you like
Yeah.
vet a lot of your decisions around that?
Yes and no. I'm not. I've been told from the beginning that I'm quite a lax parent, as in, so I'm not. I'm not a tiger mom. It's not that way, but I do. I always say that I've become such a much more powerful woman after becoming a mother. Um, and it's well for me it was also this realization that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this differently than I've experienced, and the only way I can do that if I get thick-skinned about everybody's opinion. Because if I'm sensitive to people's opinions, I've always have been. I'm a pleaser, and so if I'm going to absorb all these opinions about how I'm supposed to raise my kids, then I might get triggered all the time about the trauma that's in me, trauma, light or heavy or whatever shape it has. That's not sustainable. So I need to somehow, if I choose to do this, I need to be at peace with my way, right? And doesn't mean I shouldn't accept feedback or learn, but I should be at peace at least with myself and my way. That was one thing. And the second thing was this whole, right? Yeah, my next pregnancies were nervous till like made it past a certain threshold, right? Like it's like my body is amazing. It's very, despite everything I do to it, it's very healthy, and I've had easy pregnancies and easy deliveries apart from that first time around. But it feels like this weight, it's like it's on me. Until these kids are capable of being their own independent, sensible human being, this is me. And before anything else, that's my role in life. And so I need to guard my energy and my battery and me so I can be that for them, because who else is going to be that for them?
So, okay, so many things. So, right, you're a creator and you create these children, and I'm totally with you where this is partly your creation with like a higher being. Um, and you take that very seriously, like you said. It rises to the top as the top priority. I love how you said not only are you trying to protect your energy so you can be there for them, but when people chip away at you with advice on being a mom, it can really do some damage where you could lose your confidence. And the last thing children need is an unconfident parent, right? They need to feel safe and secure and that someone's running the show. I've always felt like that. They need to feel like someone's running the show. So you talked about how you inherently seemed like you knew you had to take care of yourself so that you could be there for them. Not all women are like that. Some women go a little too far, right? And they just give, give, give. They overgive, and they're not taking care of themselves anymore. So, do you have any like examples of what you do in order to maintain that?
Yeah, I would say that there is many people in my life, including my husband, who will tell you I do not take good care of myself. Um,
Okay.
so I'm not a champion in the self-care space at all, right? But yeah, I told you earlier I was in a very dark space. So for me, it's more the energy of like I need to be able to keep going in life. If I reach these moments where I feel like I have nothing left to give because it's just been too much and too, I I need to avoid getting to that level of depletion, and I need to. So I thought for me, it's more fundamental, really. At the I need to be functional in society. I cannot just spend my days. I can have my days in pajamas on the sofa, but I cannot have that. Cannot be the norm, right? If that helps to get back to a better functional place, great. I'm not necessarily very good at feeding myself and working out enough, and there's other parts of self-care that I struggle with. For me, time with friends and peers is huge. Time with people, but time with my people. Um, because I also know that when I'm not doing good, I can kind of pull back. But actually, the quickest way to get out of a bad cycle is to actually be stimulated by something fun that happens in the world, right? And it could also be the cashier at your local sandwich shop who's just like, you come in and so, girl, I love that dress. Or she says, oh, I felt like wearing leopard print today and I didn't, and look, but you are, so it makes me smile. And it's such an innocent conversation, but these things can help, right? It's like, okay, actually, there's other people in the world and other things happening. So for me, self-care is very much about the energy balance and the mental health space. That's where my
I feel
self-care
like,
is
and
built.
I know you. We were talking a little bit earlier. I think maybe I shouldn't say this, but could it be that some of your self care is you interacting in person, one on one? Because we talked about how like networking events like feed you, they fuel you. You like to connect one on one, with other people in person. And your podcast also, right, feed you, and so maybe that's your form of self care.
Yeah, it's definitely people. I'm an extrovert introvert, so I recharge also on my own very well. I'm one of these people who go shopping by myself. I always have as a teenager. So stuff like there's things I do that I happily do alone, right? But yeah, being around people and organizing big social events and then maybe sitting on the sideline, but being then in it, uh, I like that. I like people watching. I think for me, it's a good um relativating. I don't know how to say that in proper English, but it brings me out of my bubble to see other people, to watch other. I love people to hearing people talk so super enthusiastically about something they're doing, and even if it's something that I'm like, why would you like that? But just the I love then watching. I'm like, oh, how cool is that there's somebody who loves everything about what they're doing and what they're or people are just finding out that everybody's also just kind of trying and being reminded of that. It's the whole spectrum of it. And for me, I don't necessarily love I have the same fears around networking, right? If you put me in a room with where I don't know
Sure.
anybody, but I guess it's also from having moved so often and stuff. I also know that you can have the most fabulous random strangers and spend a magnificent 45 minutes with them and never seen them again, but they've left a mark on you or you've left a mark on them. I think people can connect actually so easy if you just think like, okay, I'm gonna smile and we're making eye contact because we're both here and it's awkward. Or we're just gonna start with something and then we'll
Yeah,
chat.
you just remember we're both humans.
Yeah. Or we just stand
Yeah,
next to each other and observe the room because we're also kind of like, I'm kind of too tired to engage people,
right,
but we're
right,
here. And then that can
right.
still be really nice, right?
Yeah. Okay, I don't know if this is true or not, but you seem like you have a fun side, almost like mischievous fun side. Is that true? And does that get to play out anywhere?
Yeah, I don't know if it's fun. I worked in extremely male dominated environments and was a significant chunks of my career also typically by a decade the younger one in most meetings or work sessions and stuff. Um, and so this whole idea that you need to assimilate to a culture becomes kind of pointless, right? Because you show up in a meeting. I went to a meeting of the Rhine Committee, and there was 80 guys, double-breasted blue blazers. They were all between 45 and 55 with facial hair, and I was 26 or 25. And you're like, okay. But then you know that by after 2 hours, that meeting is over, and 80% of the room know who you are, where you work, what car you drove there, and I've maybe shook hands with 12, right? So it's like, how do you in that? So at some point, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to show up as me, right? There's going to be people in this room who are going to have opinions about what I wear. And that happens, but I think it becomes so much, you get that clarity from being such an extreme weird outsider that you suddenly think, like, yeah, even in this very uniformist room, I'm probably going to get it wrong. And so there is stuff that's just not worth trying. And so if you're more unapologetically yourself, which doesn't mean you need to blurt out everything, but then you can also have a laugh at your own expense, which creates the space to have a laugh at something else. And I do think I'm a realist, right? That's my business also. That's what I run life on, and that's maybe also the Dutch culture thing, but we can also call it out what it is, and instead of saying you do this wrong, or you say, hey, we all this is just part of life, we all do this. And then yeah, I live in New Orleans, and I love dressing up and the whole Mardi Gras culture, and I love costumes and glitter, and just, yeah, being out with people for no other reason than raising some money for a charity and being with other people, because to me that is the biggest thing in life. That, yeah, we need to make enough money to live and to and play the rules of the games of society, but my ambition levels have changed over, yeah, my priorities, let's put it that way.
Right. Oh, they shift. It's fascinating how fast they shift. And I don't know about you, but I think I fought it for a little while, and that was not a good idea. Like you kind of got to let your life ebb and flow and then settle into the new you, right? Because what
Yeah,
is it saying? The old you can't get you to where you're trying to go anymore, right? You got to leave the
yeah.
old you behind and the new you forges ahead.
But I think particularly for women in our generation, or many, there's been this whole like, wor- the career thing was there, right? It's kind of a given that if you could, you should, right? And what I really struggled with is what I feel different for men and women is that the ambition levels the world has for you change after you turn 40-ish. So it's like, okay, you're a young woman and you have a good degree and you have the potential, so you should go after a career. So the society thinks you should have a career, and society is primed, so the people are primed to ask you questions about how your career is going, and then they're interested in how you're going to combine career with your partner and your partner's career, and then they're interested in how your career is progressing and how you're doing this career and children. And then they're in your business or your industry, they're like, okay, they're interested in you becoming one of the first women to breach this ceiling or to reach this level, or one of the few, and then you're interesting from that perspective. But then you've reached a certain level, at least in my case around 40, and I have 3 kids, and there's not going to be more kids, and I've demonstrated, I've been with my husband by now, by then I'd been with my husband well over a decade. He had his career, and so it's like, okay, well, it all seems to be working. And beyond that point, it feels like then suddenly the expectation or the interest from society in your ambition levels as a woman just drops off completely. And then it felt like suddenly ambition was just a me thing. And I
Interesting.
think it became visible to me because I moved, and I always moved with my job. And so then we were moving for my husband's job whilst I worked for myself, and I moved my company with me. That was not the
Right.
reason we moved. And I showed up with uh, probably a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So in a time where people also expect you to be full on busy and very busy with 3 kids. And so it's like, oh, what brought you here? And then the answer is like work. And then it's like your work or your husband's work. And if I said my husband's work and they saw 3 kids, there's no more questions. It's kind of like, oh yeah,
Interesting.
you're naturally very busy. And I'm like, that's actually not what fills my day. Yeah, I'm busy with that, but that's also always there. And so to me, it really feels like after a certain age, and I think in the beginning, sometimes we confuse our ambitions with what society wants of us or what we should want. And so I think the reckoning comes partially also from there is less opinions about what our ambitions should be or different and not so pronounced. And so our ambition becomes more our ambition.
I love that.
And that comes with some self work and realization, I think, on what's really true in there and what are we doing because we think we should. And should we continue, do we continue to have the energy to work on stuff we think we should, but we don't really feel? And
Yes, we were talking about how draining that is. Absolutely. And you can only do it for so long. I
yeah.
love that. I love what you're lot to unpack there. I know you have to go soon. So just to wrap it up, if you could give some advice to some up and coming women on how to maintain their authenticity, how to maintain, within reason, like we talked about, we're still functioning in a world, how to maintain their power, how to stay authentic and like what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think there's many things and nothing, right? I believe very much in that I would sometimes get held up as the poster saying, "Well, you're a working mom in this company. Can you tell other working moms or new moms how to do this?" And I'm like, "Well, what works for me doesn't work for somebody else, right? You need to get to a place where you are at peace, somewhat at peace, right, with the decisions that you made. And so, actually spending some time on that decision making is worth it because otherwise that peace doesn't come. And one of those things I think that for me is very helpful to ask myself says who, because I still do so many things in life because I think I should do them. And if I really ask myself says who, then it's they or them, then it's like, it's like society or whatever. And it's like, it's not, it doesn't even have a name or a face. It's actually ridiculous. Why do I then do this, right? Because
Love
should I
that.
should I
Says
do it?
who? Yes.
Yeah. So I think putting some effort and time into decision making, asking yourself says who, why, but also a little bit why now. Uh, and I've had good success with choosing to do things in waves or committing in waves. I'm an impatient person, but if I started a new job, I would kind of say, okay, for 3 months, the new job kind of has to come first a little bit so that I actually get my feet on the table. Because if I do that well, it will be easier after that, right? And if there's people who have doubts about me as a working mom being committed enough or stuff, that will come off the table. They will have gotten to know me. And then there's more flexibility to maybe maneuver. And so I don't want that to come at the expense of my kids, but it might not, I might do less of their sports games for a bit, and I might reduce my social stuff a little bit, but I don't want to eliminate it completely. But I try to create these waves that are not insurmountable, right? 3 months is doable to just give and kind of acknowledge that no, I cannot juggle continuously. So it's nice to be able to put one ball down and just carry two for a little bit or allow yourself to do that, right?
I think that is a really smart strategy. The 3 month wave, as you're saying that, I think that I've done that too, not really realizing I did. See, that's one of those things that you just did naturally. That is actually a strategy that some women should know. Like, yeah, those first 3 months, getting everyone to know you, you're getting to know them. It's almost like you have to get to know the rules so then you know which ones you can break, right?
Yeah.
But the first 3 months, you get to know the rules.
Yeah, but also then creating the space that if something runs longer, you can stay because you've made sure so that there is some flexibility to find out when it's helpful to stay longer or not, and not try to make it work with on already lots of restrictions, right? So it's just having the ability to ride that wave for 3 months in whatever way it comes out at you, because you don't know yet, right? But it's also with, if you're moving houses, then create the space that you can be 3 months busy with recreating life in a new house. And maybe
Mm,
can you take some other stuff off your plate to allow that to evolve as it does and deal with it, right? I
mhm,
think it's not
mhm.
just work. I think it's change. Create some breathing room for yourself to just get that sort of working instead of doing it all in parallel and then never getting any of it quite there.
I love that. I think that is great advice. Before we close, I want to sincerely thank you for sharing your time and perspective with us today. These conversations really matter, and I'm grateful for your openness. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Powerful Women Off the Record with Elizabeth Veely. If today's episode resonated, please share it with a woman who needs to hear it. And if it feels aligned, follow the show so you don't miss what's next. Until then, stay sovereign.